Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Captain Hunter's podcast, the podcast that is dedicated towards bridging the divide between the police and the communities that they serve. So I want to thank you all for tuning in once again. You all are making my heart glad. Thank you so much for the love and support and good and positive feedback that has been coming in. Thank you for sharing, liking, and subscribing. Please make sure that you do that. If you are listening to these episodes on the website, that's great. I want you to remember that you can download the episodes. You can go to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Breaker, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to podcasts at. Download the episodes. That way you can take it with you and or share it with your friends. While you're driving in your car, hey, tell them, listen, check out this episode that I heard of Captain Hunter's podcast, and make sure that your friends and your neighbors and coworkers and loved ones share, like, and subscribe as well. Remember that you can help support the podcast through Venmo, through Cash App, and through PayPal. All of those are CPTL Hunter. You can go to Patreon page, Captain Hunter's podcast on Patreon, and subscribe and just help out the show. Anything and everything that you give is only going to help to make sure that the show continues to go on and grow on. I'm going to be selling mugs and t-shirts fairly shortly, so be on the lookout for those. You can go over to the Facebook page. Check out the Facebook page. That's where I will have the shirts and mugs on display. Also on the website, LMH Police Training and Consulting. HunterPoliceTraining.com is the website, LMH Police Training and Consulting. So you can check all that out. That's where all the products and merchandise will be at. Also, I want you to remember that if you have a promotional test coming up and or if you want to become a police officer, make sure that you hit me up. You're looking for consultation services as far as training, implicit bias training, or any of the topics that I have discussed on previous episodes. Hit me up. I'm your man. You know, we can talk about these things. Supervisory, ethics, supervision, all that kind of stuff. I can help you out with that. So just give me a call, give me a shout out, hit me up in the email, cptlhunter@gmail.com, hunterpoliceconsulting@gmail.com. Those are the email addresses. Also remember, you can follow me on Twitter, cptlhunter, Instagram, cptlhunter. Got a great episode for you today. We're going to be speaking with a PhD from Puerto Rico, Dr. Rafael Torruella. Now, unfortunately, I think that there's some issues going on with his website at the time that I'm recording this episode, so hopefully it'll be up in the future. This may be due to the recent earthquakes that they've had down in Puerto Rico, so we're certainly wishing them the best with all that. So his website is Intercambios, INTERCAMBIOSPR.org. Intercambios Puerto Rico is the name of the corporation. Dr. Rafael Torruella is the executive director of that organization. And the organization is really just dedicated to harm reduction. Harm reduction being that philosophy of meeting people where they are and helping them to slowly and gradually escape from the death grip of drugs and I would imagine any other vice, right? So I'll let Dr. Torruella tell you more about him and his organization. Unfortunately, like I said, I tried to get this bio, tried to review the website at this time, and it seems to be down at the moment. However, we're hoping that everything can get back up. But I met Dr. Torruella at the drug reform conference that I went to in St. Louis, Missouri back in 2019, November 2019. We had a great conversation, and we recorded the episode live in St. Louis in the hotel. So there is a little bit of background noise, but that does not stop the message from coming forth loud and clear. Dr. Torruella is dedicated towards helping people where they are and meeting their social needs, right? And you meet their social needs, the trauma and pain that they're going through, and through meeting those needs will be an avenue to get them off of any type of harmful and addictive drugs and other behaviors. So that's what we got going on for today. This is a continuation of the series that we're doing about just drug reform. If we're going to meet the community where we need to be, if the community is going to be any better, then we need to meet them where they are. And I think that only makes sense. Demanding, beating our fists on the table and saying, straighten up, fly right, get yourself together, pull yourself over your bootstraps, doesn't work all the time. And I would question, and many other experts are questioning whether it even works at all. So that is the path that Dr. Torruella and many other people, if you listen to the episode with Dr. Kanika Turner, you know that this is a growing phenomenon, harm reduction, and trying to help people get off of drugs and trying to help people become the best them that they can be. Quitting drugs cold turkey may work for some people. However, it doesn't work for everyone. So we want to meet people where they are and do the best we can to help them to become the best that they can be. So enough of me rambling on. Here is the interview with Dr. Rafael Torruella of Intercambios, Puerto Rico. We are at the International Drug Policy Reform Conference hosted by the Drug Policy Alliance, and this is Captain Hunter. And I have a special guest for today. His name is Rafael Torruella.
Yep.
Okay. PhD, and you are with the Intercambios, Puerto Rico.
That's correct.
So tell us a little bit about what that organization is and what you do.
Right. So I guess the first thing I should say is thank you for your time, and I feel very lucky to be back in my country, in Puerto Rico, leading this amazing team of individuals that do harm reduction, that do what a lot of people say they want to do or that we should do in society, but don't. This team actually does. And what is that? It's just, building respect with the drug using community, building ties and building solidarity with people who use drugs actively, and listen to them, understand them, and provide services based on evidence. And again, being solidarity. It's no charity. We don't want to save the world. We don't want to save people who are dying on drugs. Of course we want to do that, but that's not the perspective. The perspective is there are a lot of people there that need help in our communities that have been forgotten by the government, pushed aside by the government, pushed aside by many forces in society, by capitalism itself, right, yeah. Pushed in a corner, right? And in Puerto Rico, we're all, what can I tell you? We've been devastated by many forces, I would say first by colonialism, yes. Like a lot of people, Second by race relations, right. We're part of the United States, we don't even count, right? So, we don't have a right to vote. Puerto Rico,
which is crazy.
It's crazy.
I think
it's a colonial relationship. It's that's what it means. People go, but you're saying colony. What does it mean? Trump is our president. Oh. But we didn't vote for him. We don't have the right to vote. Just how can I let that sink in?
Right.
We don't have the right to vote. Right? Like if you, U.S. citizen, move to Puerto Rico, you lose your right to vote.
Crazy.
It's not because of course they're not going to frame it as because you're Puerto Rican, because if you move to the unincorporated territory of Puerto Rico, you don't have the right to vote. Right. And you have one representative to Congress, and right now as a woman, she doesn't have a vote. She can only yell, kick, and scream, but she has no votes behind her, nor can she vote on committees or in General Congress, right? So there's no power, bro. That's what it boils down to, and that's what colonialism is. Beyond the racist, classist politics that rule over the island because we are beholden to Congress, period. We're under the plenary powers of Congress. So that's a basic battle. And then how does that trickle down to the reality? Well, there's a lot of drug use. There's very little services for drug users because we get block grants it's a different Medicaid system. We get a block grant and then you use it. It's not the exchange that Obama set up. We didn't enter into that system. We can't enter into that system. It's not permitted. So stuff moves differently. It's the United States, but it's not. It's Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's not. And our work is working with drug users and providing them services. Then we provide advocacy, and then we provide technical assistantship in Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and Latin America. But let me break that down. Services, we provide syringe exchange. We go up to people. If you need syringes, we'll give you syringes. Those syringes that you have that have been previously used, give me those syringes. I'll teach you how to shoot up correctly. People say, you tell people how to shoot up correctly?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy, but you know what? If we don't do that, people are going to inject wrong. And
Right.
that's how HIV and hepatitis C come into our communities. Oh, do we help them get out of drugs? Yeah, we do. When they're good and ready. As in, and I don't want to be demeaning, it's like not everybody that says, I want to leave drugs now is 100% achievable. You need to prepare the person a little bit, and more than anything, you need to prepare the system, because it's not that easy. We don't have access to care, as in, I snap my fingers and I have somebody picking this person up, taking them to detox, or taking them to a buprenorphine or methadone program. We don't have that. That's not available like that. There's no what we call treatment on demand. So you need to prepare this. You need to make that linkage. We do that too, of course. I mean, we have a team of 3 doing syringe exchange. We use peer workers, so people who know intimately the problem of the war on drugs, the problem of using drugs, the personal struggles, the community struggles, the social struggles. Those are the ones that do it, and I don't have to. There are a lot more people more equipped than me or any other person that has studied. People in the community need to take that on, and we need to give those jobs to people in the community, right? That we're beholden to. We also provide, along with that team, a nurse and a case manager. Then we have another team that does substance use disorder, beginning of treatment, mental health counseling, drug use counseling, and case management in order to get people who not only suffer from problematic drug use and co-occurring disorders that have like a depression, anxiety, any other diagnosis of mental health, and are homeless, we get them into permanent housing, right? So we got different projects in order to work with evidence and with compassion and with and from a human rights perspective to change positively the lives of these people who need help. And again, we're in solidarity. We can only offer so much, but we offer all that to somebody to better their lives. And that's our work. And then we also advocate for policy change, because you need to educate the people who are less educated. And I don't mean the community, I mean the policymakers. They're the least educated. I mean, the community knows what's up in many ways. The community knows that we shouldn't be arresting people for small possessions of marijuana.
Right.
I mean, the community knows that. It's policymakers that don't get it or don't want to get it, right? And that's a big issue.
I think they don't
right? And don't want to change the laws so people don't have to arrest people. Right? And that's what we need to change. It's important for drug users to change some behaviors and risk, and that's what we do. But it's also important to change the laws that are racist and don't work and are stacked against our own communities, right? So we need to change that, and we're for changing that also.
And that's got to be incredibly difficult because, as you mentioned, there's no power, right? You have one representative, and because you're no voting power as far as who you can vote into office. So as far as the president.
At the federal level.
Right. So that's got to be incredibly, incredibly difficult. So let me ask you this. Can you change the laws strictly on the island so there's no war on drugs? Even though the war on drugs would be in the United States, can you stop it as far as going on in Puerto Rico?
Well, we can stop some things, right? I mean, we can, if the federal law says you got to do X or Y, and we have no power to change that, our laws can be in contradiction. Local law cannot be in contradiction with federal law. We need to follow federal law. That's where the power resides, right? But to answer your question, yes, we can change things in Puerto Rico to soften the blow of the war on drugs, right? Because changing the war on drugs is big and massive. It's not just about the laws. It's about markets. It's about rebuilding communities. It's about, now that we're creating cannabis markets, letting people in that were incarcerated by the war on drugs because they were selling cannabis.
Right.
You know,
selling a plant.
Yeah, it's like you were selling a plant, you go to jail. And that's good when it's low socioeconomic Puerto Ricans doing it in a corner.
Right.
Oh, but when it's legalized for medical purposes like we have in Puerto Rico, then you get the white Puerto Rican with money coming in, and the law that's written is taking out people who've been caught with a felony or around the drug world, right? So they're straight up racist. They're keeping people out, right? So and those are difficult discussions, because now you have a market, but the people who really need the money and need the jobs and need to have small businesses that know about weed, that know about cannabis, can't build it up because they were arrested, right? When it's bad, it's for poor communities, and when it's good, it's for more rich, more white communities, right? And that's a problem. That can be fixed in Puerto Rico internally, and that's our fight, right? It's like, well, no, this is unjust, even if we wrote it as in Puerto Rico, but we need to fix that. We can change some stuff too. We can add harm reduction service programs. So people, for some people, drug use is bad, and if that's not bad enough, the worst would be walk out with HIV and hepatitis C, right?
Right.
So yeah, there are some things that are under our control, and that's our battle. That's what we're trying to change, right? As part of a small non-governmental organization, how much power do we, as an organization, community-based organization, have vis-a-vis, the political class in Puerto Rico, which is also not wanting to change things for drug users, because many of them are deeply corrupt. And like in the United States, and Puerto Rican corruption has been in the news recently, but it's still a hard pull internally in Puerto Rico.
Talk about harm reduction. That's a new term. I was a police officer, so I'm not. This whole world about is really new to me, and I'm actually really enjoying learning about it. So harm reduction. What does that mean?
Harm reduction means that you're going to have a different look at drugs. First, non-judgmental. And second, non-criminalizing, right? And it's understanding that not everybody that uses drugs has a problem with drug use.
Right. They're not all addicts, you're saying.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Harm reduction is focusing not necessarily on drug use itself, but focusing on what does that person need in order to make their quality of life and their functionality better. If you're not functioning, it means that you're going to take the best of science and apply that. Not necessarily what you think about drugs is what needs to be done with drug users. For example, a lot of people think that tough love is the only thing a person who has problematic drug use needs. But we know that a lot of tough love doesn't work, actually make stuff worse.
Makes it worse, yeah.
It re-traumatizes people that have been traumatized through their lives, or for us in Puerto Rico, by colonialism, by lack of political power, by lack of controlling our own future, right? So it's its own type of messed up slavery, right? That we're living, right? So that creeps into your being, not having political power and be able to say where your community and where your life is going, because the feds simply think it's not what they want. Right now we're under a fiscal oversight board, so we have 7 people who are not elected by us, controlling all of our finances, all of our lives, right? And dictating policy. And how did that feel? A lot of people turn into drug use.
Right.
So harm reduction is not judging that person, helping that person be more in tune with society if they're not, and helping them through when and if they have a problem.
There's a lot of reasons why people turn to drugs. You talked about colonialism, the effects of that, the long-lasting history of that. Obviously, my African-American heritage of being traumatized, slavery, Jim Crow, and all that.
That's our history.
Right.
But if that's true, it's also true that problematic drug use also comes because of the situations that we live in right now.
Right.
Which is, again, no control. Having no access to adequate jobs, having no access to adequate schools, not having access many times to supermarkets, For a part of my life, I lived in the South Bronx. And I can tell you supermarkets weren't the same thing as when you crossed over to Manhattan, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the living conditions you're at. I'm not saying that if you don't have the right supermarket, you're going to turn to drugs. I'm just saying the living, right, I don't want to be misunderstood.
Right.
But the living conditions that we live in, a lot of people turn to drugs because drugs work. What do I mean by that? Drugs many times cover things in life that we need to get covered, like anxiety, like trauma. So we turn to drug for tons of reasons, very personal reasons and very social reasons. But what would actually help us get out of drugs is jobs, is equality, is talking about racism and dealing with racism. These many times drugs are there to heal wounds. Many times not positively. It's not the right answer, but that's the reality of why people use drugs too. So when we talk about changing drug policies, we're also talking about trying to build a more just world, that if an African American person gets caught with cocaine, it's not way worse for them that if a white person gets caught with cocaine. And I don't know about you, but I haven't never seen a limo being stopped and searched. You know what I'm saying?
I could tell you.
And we know what happens in limos, right? So there's drinking, they're probably getting coked up, or whatever have you.
Right.
It's privilege, right? So when we talk about drug policies, we also talk about a more just world in many ways, right? So it's not this horrible living conditions that people can't overcome. And then there's the other part. As I mentioned before, not all drug use is problematic drug use. I think we really need to understand that. For example, what's worse? A person smoking marijuana once or being caught and the weight of the law of marijuana coming down upon you? In Puerto Rico, it's 3 years. If you're caught with a small amount of marijuana for personal use, you can go up to 3 years into jail. Beyond, it's not an effective way of policing or living for anybody, right? But you have a lot more chances if you're poor and black than if you're rich and white to get caught, So when we talk about drug policies, we talk about that. So we talk about social justice. We talk about, harm reduction, reducing the harms and not being judgmental. And also changing those structures that make things stacked against some people and favorable to others, right? So I guess we're also culprits of wanting to end racism and wanting to end
such
classism.
Lofty goals. Such lofty goals.
But the thing is, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
And we're starting with drug users because you can see that the war on drug doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work for any of us because it's not working for anybody in Puerto Rico. It's not working for anybody in the United States except for those who are profiting from it, right?
Right.
And that's what's wrong. So they're lofty goals, but they also have a very specific thing that we can do about it. Stop arresting drug users. Drug users that have problematic drug use do not belong in jails and prisons. They belong, and if you have a problem with drug use, you belong in a treatment center of your choosing and what best works for you. That's where we should be investing the money. So our communities are more healed than just being continually pummeled by the war on drugs. Which we know is racist, classist, and doesn't work, right? Drugs are now more potent, drugs are now more prevalent, and anybody can get drugs. In Puerto Rico, a 13-year-old kid can walk up and get drugs or be selling the drugs, right? So the war on drugs is not working.
Right.
So we advocate for stuff like regulation of the markets of marijuana. People tell me, oh, but then you want kids to smoke? No, precisely because I don't want kids to have access to marijuana and all drugs. I want to regulate the market. So only people who are adults and have, like, for medical marijuana, have the permit, and for recreational, whoever's an adult that doesn't run counter to that system can actually access that in a responsible way, right?
Right.
Because then that's the way we begin to organize and better form a response to what right now has no plan. Being truthful, right now we have no plan in Puerto Rico or in the United States to finish the drug war. It's all about more policing, more cops, more cars, and that's part of the response, but it hasn't been working. And many times you talk to police officers and they go like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I keep arresting kids with marijuana. It's worse for them to get arrested than the marijuana itself.
Right.
What's worse, the effect of the marijuana, which some people enjoy, and now it's medicinal, so in many ways, so some people would actually say it's a good thing, but probably not for kids. But arresting them is probably worse for their life, right?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember one of my first experiences when I was on FTO, that's field training, and I was a brand new officer, and so during the FTO process, you have to sit with another senior officer. So another senior officer is monitoring my report, seeing how I'm interacting with the public and all that kind of stuff. So my first arrest was a woman she was probably in her 50s or so. She was a white woman, and she was caught stealing from, I think it was a Stop and Shop, a local grocery store. She steals whatever she steals. Security catches her, and we get there, and we had to lock her up. I'm talking to this lady, and I felt so bad for her because she said she was hooked on crack. This is 1995 or so.
Right.
She's hooked on crack, and her reason for stealing whatever she stole was so that she could get more, crack. And I felt so bad for her. And this was the first experience that I had with understanding the social implications of it, right? So she was stealing in order to satisfy this need, but and then I look at also where does the need come from? This need to, right? Is she masking the pain, as you talked about before? Does she go through some type of traumatic event? And I felt so bad for her. Now, I had to go through what I had to go through. I had to do my job, but obviously 20 plus years later, I saw it at the time, I see it today, that this needs to stop and needs to change.
We need to divert that.
Right. And so
we need to make police officers not be in the hard spot, right?
Right.
What can I say? I think the police force can be guided to other issues that need your attention.
Right.
Like in Puerto Rico, we need more police officers to focus on corruption. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure
there's
New Jersey can say that, New York can say that, and it's a different type of policing, right? But whatever. It's just where do resources go, and who are resources directed to and for what?
Right.
The war on drugs is directly to the poor, black and brown communities, and it's for social control, because they ain't fixing anything.
They're not fixing anything.
Right? So we need to find a fix to this, right? We need to find what works. And science points a direction of how we can treat heroin users. Mm-hmm. And there's a debate about how to implement buprenorphine and methadone clinics and all that. But we know methadone works if it's applied correctly, and humanely, and not to be, you don't want warehousing people and all that. You don't want to mess either. Mm. But the medication does work. It has 60 years of science. It's just how to apply it correctly. Because it has the ability of getting people from that need that many times pushes some people, not everybody steals, to steal and then get caught and have a run-in, and then that's a crime, and et cetera, et cetera. Methadone and buprenorphine can help if they're used and provided correctly, right? So we know how to fix this, but we also need resources, right?
Now, there's there's a few drugs like methadone, and what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, so some people who use methadone are those who are, for lack of a better term, the lower classes, and there's some Soxil, some other type of medication that more affluent people are using, and they get to use it at their homes. I heard this in one of the...
Well, yeah, there's methadone, and then there's buprenorphine, and one has more research behind it than the other, but not to say that we shouldn't have both, because I think we should.
Okay.
Methadone has been more traditionally used because it has more evidence, and it came into the market of providing treatment services earlier in the United States. We have about 60 years of evidence saying methadone works. Works for what? It works for somebody to be in long-term medication that keeps you from needing to use heroin. So you literally can kick heroin by using methadone. And then many people say, well, methadone is addictive, and well, yeah, it's you need that medication in order not to go back to heroin, but I don't necessarily see it as addictive. It's your medication. And just like heart medication, we don't say, oh, you're addicted to heart medication, you need to stop heart medication. No, heart medication is keeping you from dying if you have a cardiovascular disease. We don't say you're addicted to insulin if you have problems with diabetes, right? But suddenly, because of the stigma and discrimination, we say, oh, but it keeps you addicted if it's methadone. Right? So some people are going to need medication.
Now, would they go through some type of withdrawal if they got off of the methadone?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But there's also buprenorphine. But a lot of people will need this medication for long periods of time, and that's okay. You know why? Because this medication keeps them focused on life, and it gives them new possibilities to not wake up sick, dope sick, and needing to go and get dope, right? Same thing with buprenorphine. I guess in some places, methadone might be more for lower class and then buprenorphine for higher class. But at least in Puerto Rico, we have access to methadone and buprenorphine. Now, buprenorphine is coming to be more attractive now because it's being applied in better ways. They don't silo people so much. You can have it within the privacy of your patient-doctor relationship. You know, I don't have to go to a methadone clinic every day. I can go to my doctor and say, I need my medication. And the doctor can give it to you if he or she is trained and can give you up to a month. So I don't have to go every day and be singled out and as a drug user because I'm in this clinic and can't get jobs. I can get in and get 30 days of medication, can go home and take it every morning or every night, depending on what prescription is.
And that can be incredibly humiliating to people to have to go to this methadone clinic. Yeah. As a police officer, one of our extra duty assignments that we did for extra pay was to stand by a methadone clinic. Yeah. Now, is that because the doctors or whatever don't trust to give the patients all of their medication at one time?
That's part of it, and it's built around that. It's built around just take drug users out of regular care and put them in the special clinics, which had its time. But it's also time to integrate services. I mean, if you go get services now, the talk is integration of services, you know. And it's also the integration of patients. I mean, many drug users look like you and I. They don't have to look like the quote-unquote junkie, prototype and stigmatized look that we have in our brain. A lot of people use drugs and run into problematic drug use that you might never know because they're ashamed to tell you, and there's a lot of stigma and discrimination if you do say you are a drug user and might not want to be going to a methadone clinic.
Right.
So there are better ways. And why build methadone clinics to begin with in that way? You know, we can build a system that you have problematic drug use, but you can go to a regular doctor, tell them I have this issue, and the doctor should also be trained and knowledgeable, or many of them are, not most, some of them are, and they can do this. Right? They can actually provide medication.
Interesting. Yeah. So talk about this social work. So we want to bring. You talk about integration of services. So somebody has a drug problem, addiction, or whatever, and we want to get them a job. We want to fix their psychological problems. We want to fix the social aspects around their life.
Right. So this is all predicated in there's no cure for this. This is not like a wound that you have in your arm and you get it sewed up a little bit and then you put a patch on it and you'll be fine. It heals. It's not like that. It's what we call many times a chronic condition. So it goes up, it goes down, it cycles, it comes back, right? But you're going to live with it. So you're not going to get cured, you just need to attend to it and be working with it. And how do you do that? Well, you have we call it a biopsychosocial model. Rather than shaming people, telling them they're not worth anything, telling them that you need to change your ways, that doesn't work that well. What actually we know by science that works is biopsychosocial model, which attends first to your biology, if you have biological needs. That which I'm telling you, methadone, buprenorphine, so you don't wake up dope sick. You don't wake up with withdrawal symptoms needing that substance, right? You talk to a medical doctor, they provide medicine for your chronic condition so you don't go back to the space you were. You need some treatment, you need some pharmacological treatment. Nurses can also do this. Then the psycho. The psycho is the mental health piece. When you take drugs, and life is not just about medicines. We don't want to just rely on medicines. We also want to walk into a space where we can talk about frustrations. Like in Puerto Rico, a lot of people started taking drugs because of the hurricane and what's happening.
Wow.
Right? So we want to talk about that trauma of going through a hurricane that you didn't have power for 3, 4, 5 months, and FEMA decided not to do anything, and President Trump comes in throwing paper towels. You know how that feels? That's damning, that's shaming. And that doesn't work for a lot of people.
So
and when there's no treatment, you need a space to deal with that.
Right.
And I want you to, even when you're taking drugs, have alternatives to be able, I want to give you a way out of that problematic drug use. So I can give you a way out of having a medication that helps you, and I want to give you a space with a mental health person to talk about this and work through issues. And I also want to give you the social, which is a social worker, a case manager that can help you with reconnecting with your family, maybe entering into a housing if you don't have housing, having a plan about life and how you want to rebuild your life, or maybe go back to school, or maybe change a little bit treatment, and we work as a group. The biopsychosocial is an approach in order to help you with your drug use, and this is well documented by science. And all I'm saying about harm reduction is that works better than putting people in jail and prison.
Can you imagine that? All that stuff that you mentioned.
It seems revolutionary, but it's not,
It works so much better than throwing people in cages.
Figure that. But
who would have known?
But we need to talk through it, because a lot of people say, well, if you don't put people in cages, then what are we going to do?
Right, the sky's going to fall. People are going to be robbing and stealing in the streets, and
people are going to stop selling and stealing in the street. Because it's not that I'm okay with all drug use. But I think the problem of drug use in the United States and Puerto Rico, it's bigger than just putting people in cages. That's what I'm saying. It's not that revolutionary, but it feels that way because we've been fed this idea of drug users are just bad people. And they're not bad people. They're good and bad people in very difficult circumstances. Right. That should feel more real. And those circumstances have ways of getting better, not worse. Putting people in a cage is worse. Giving people adequate human rights-based health services is better. That's what we advocate for. Science-based, evidence-based, humane health services and other types of services. That is not a far cry from what we're asking in communities in general. That's not a far cry for what LGBTQ communities are asking. That's not a far cry from what Puerto Ricans and poor communities are asking, right? So why can't drug users are part of our community? We might not like it, but they're part of a community because they're cousins, daughters, brothers. I mean, they're part of they're people we know. They're not this far away person. It could be your cousin, it could be your aunt, it could be your uncle, it could be your parent, and right?
A lot of people don't think about the orbit of people, right? So you arrest someone in the orbit around them, right? Their loved one is now in jail. They're in prison for petty crimes.
And that didn't work.
And now the children are traumatized. People got to take off time from work or travel to go visit these people.
Well, and not only that, even when they leave, you have a rap sheet.
Right.
You can't get a job. And then you're back in. And then we talk about recidivism in prisons. Well, yeah. Because not only did we not get jobs, now you have a rap sheet and you can't even get the job at McDonald's?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. What are we doing?
Crazy.
Right? So that's what I mean by people who use drugs and commit, many times we talk about it in nonviolent crimes, I guess it's some type of language, but people who use drugs that are in need of those drugs, and that is the cause of why they're getting involved in different types of crimes, they shouldn't go to jail. They should be addressed with humanity and the best of health and the best of assistance. Not everybody needs medication. A lot of people just need to connect. And that's and also answering what harm reduction is. Connecting at a human level to know what do you need to be better. Better could be framed as in functionality. Better could be quality of life. What do you need? Why are you in such disarray? Why can you stop using crack? And how can we, honestly, and from a humble place, not like I want to get you out and rescue, I want to be in solidarity. How may we help?
Right.
Tell me, what can we do? And a lot of people are just pissed off and they turn to crack. A lot of people are just pissed off and turn into the needle. Many people just need to connect. They might or might not have a diagnosis, but we can work with that. I'm saying that that's a better view, more humane, and will be better for us individually, us as communities, and us as societies as we address other bigger lofty goals than putting people in cages. That's all it is, right? and creating a more just world. And again, we can talk in lofty things and ending poverty and in racism because we're in that line. It's not like, oh, if you don't put my people in your cages, then I'm good and I'll back off. No, I'll keep fighting because this is also a fight against racism, classism, right? It's about that. We're just focusing on these individuals because it's very clear that many of these people are poor and black and brown communities. And that's our fight.
So we kind of jumped right into the conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a PhD.
Yeah.
Where's your PhD from? Where did you grow up at? How'd you get into this line of work?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Puerto Rico. But I was lucky that I've been able to study in different places in the United States. I studied a couple places. I did Florida for a few years. I went to Indiana, so not too far from here in kind of way, in context, for a couple of years. And then I did my PhD in social psychologist. I'm a social psychologist by training in New York City. And then I did my postdoctoral studies in drug use and public health, specifically in the Puerto Rican population, both on the island and off the island, so in New York. And that was by National Institute of Drugs Abuse. And yeah, those are my studies. And now I'm just privileged to have not only worked in the United States in a lot of harm reduction places, or a few harm reduction places in New York, but now I lead this beautiful organization of amazing people that are doing that work in where we're from, right, in Puerto Rico. We're specifically located in Fajardo, which is a northeastern corner, and we provide services to over 10 municipalities all around the northeastern sector. Puerto Rico has 78 municipalities. We provide services to about 12. Okay. And services means that, being out there in outreach in difficult locations in different spots, reaching out to what some people call hard to reach populations. They have that language, and for us it's not hard to reach because, they're our folk. That's who we are beholden to, and that's who we work with all the time, and that's who we want to make sure that their lives are better.
Very good. Very good. Do you have anything that's coming up? Are you writing any books, literature, website? Tell us how we can.
So we have a website. It's called intercambiospr.org. Intercambiospr.org. And there you can find actually one report that actually talks about how drug users' civil and human rights are being violated basically every day in Puerto Rico. And that's one report that we're really proud of. And it's part of a report around Latin America and the Caribbean that was published a few years back. And we're always fighting for more better services and just mostly focused on changing drug laws that don't work. New projects coming up. More and better services. Hopefully in the next year or so, we're going to start a new project, see how we can provide comprehensive drug user health to people in the community. So we don't want to wait for people to come to us, but us go to them and say, again, basically, what do you need? I got a medical doctor here, I got a case manager, I got multiple services right here in the community for you. Because many times where we fail is like we build these places, well, not in Puerto Rico, but in the United States, with these places that, many times they're not open door to our communities. Beautiful, amazing hospital can be beautiful, amazing. But if the community doesn't trust that beautiful hospital, it'll be useless for us, right? It can do amazing research. Right. Baltimore suffers from this, right? They're amazing researchers and all that, but sometimes the relationship with these amazing places are not that great with some communities, right? And the drug using community is a community you really got to know what you're doing, so you don't recreate that stigma and discrimination and just not provide adequate services.
The shame of it causes people to use more, in your opinion?
Yeah.
They're hiding more, they're going into dark corners and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than seeking the help, which is why you have to go to them.
Right. And the policing of drug users and the laws that many times police officers need to follow are laws that shouldn't be there, because if you are looking for people who are using drugs, what are those people who are using drugs going to do? They're going to hide. And the representation of people who are using drugs is by and large negative. So you're telling a person who uses drugs, you're bad, you're dirty. And now you're clean, now you're dirty. No, nobody's dirty. Did you take a shower this morning? You're clean. Do you have the resources to take a shower this morning because you're homeless? Let me help you. Let me not put you in jail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's about not persecuting people who might have an illness, right? Is being more humane. And yes, if you police people and look for people who are using drugs, those people are going to hide. And if people hide, they're going to be hiding in places where you can't get them, which means many times they hide behind garbage. You know, like there was this woman that told us once this amazing thing, you know, that I hadn't thought about it, but she put it in a very blunt way. You know, she used to be a sex worker. And then she just got so heavy on her drug use. And one time she just smelled really bad. You know, and I went up to her. It's like, what do you need? Let me help you. We have showers. And she kept turning me down. That's fine. She doesn't have to do what I say. You know, it's not about that. But, you know, every time I just said, you know, we have that shower there, whatever you need. And she just said, you know what? I don't want to take a shower. I'm like, what's up? Says, because if I do, people start raping me.
Oh, God.
You see what I'm saying? So
wow.
She was using that dirt in order to safeguard her body and herself. That, the hair on my arm is standing up right now, right? Because that's heavy.
You know,
people living in those conditions in order to be safe.
I can identify with that. I smelled many of a prostitute when we arrest them, when we get up close to them, harass them, for lack of a better term, right? Get off the corner, move around. And so we get out the car, we get close enough, and then we as officers, I'm going to tell a secret here, would joke about it, like, who's sleeping with these girls? Who's letting them in their cars? And so that's very telling as to why they were intentionally... Yeah. In some cases,
exactly. I don't want to oversell it, but what this woman said is like, wow, that's deep.
That is deep.
That somebody needs to be in a way dirty in order to be safe.
Right.
What are we doing to these people as a society? I'm not saying you are bad or we're bad. We are bad in certain ways because we're not fixing it.
Right.
But that's a human being. They shouldn't be in that position.
Right. They shouldn't
we should be taking care of our brothers and sisters so they're not in that position. Yeah. What happened? When did we leave them behind? When was it okay to be just dirty and in the streets and us not doing about it? And then worse, that our own community sometimes turn against ourselves that way. Because that's our community. Like it or not, that's who we are.
I think that's a defense mechanism of us.
Of course.
To say these people made their choices, their decisions, and I don't have to have that.
And how many choices do we really make?
Right.
About that.
That's a good
You know,
point.
That poverty is poverty in our choice?
Right. I'm choosing to be poor.
We got to be really careful with that. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm pretty sure there's some Republican Puerto Ricans and some high Republicans now high on Trump. Black folks, I would say, yeah, you're choosing that. Right? It's
right.
Not. No.
You're
no.
Right. Nobody's choosing that. Right?
No. Nobody chooses to be poor and dirty.
Right.
And then you might be choosing, but why?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And those are the hard discussions, you know?
It's very hard. Yeah.
Why is the system so stacked up against black and brown? It's racism. Let's call it for what it is.
Right.
And racism and lack of jobs, and at least in Puerto Rico, can talk about they're dismantling the University of Puerto Rico. One, they're making it really expensive. They're closing schools out in most communities around Puerto Rico. You know, we're going through austerity measures, and people are getting taxed double, like very highly, as the Fiscal Oversight Board is trying to make the minimum wage for the youth $4.25. That's what's happening, and that's not right. They're condemning us to more poor circumstances, and then we need to leave Puerto Rico. That's why you're seeing more and bigger Puerto Rican communities in Orlando and Philly, because they're kicking us out of our own island.
So they can monetize it and
make whatever they want with it. And we have no voice on it.
Yeah.
That's not easy, right?
No,
and we
it's not
didn't choose
easy.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't choose that.
Right.
I know I can't vote.
Right.
I know I didn't vote for the Fiscal Oversight Board, and I know drug use is getting worse as the economy gets worse.
Excellent point.
We got to put those dots together, right?
Yeah.
And then, so what's the role of police officers, right? I mean, police officers are in a real pinch because you got to follow law, but if you got some type of consciousness, you know that that's wrong.
Right.
That's not an easy spot, but it's, it needs to be resolved. Right. So we need to get people into community treatment before they get to drug courts that many times don't work. That's another elephant in the room that people are not talking about. Drug courts don't work. They get tons of money. Oh, that some people graduate and do well? Yeah, but for the amount of money that's being put into it, compared to community treatment that we know works better and it's not so coercive, what does a judge know about drugs anyways? I think I got people in my crew that know more about drugs and treatment and services than a judge. I don't want to talk down on a judge, but judge knows about law. We know about drugs, right? It's very complex.
Very complex. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time, Dr. Torruella. My close, Torruella. I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on Captain Hunter's podcast.
So I want to thank Dr. Torruella for being on the podcast. Thank you so much. Very enlightening, very informative, and I hope that you all learned something as well. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, being on drugs and being hooked on drugs, if you've never been in that place, then do not look down your nose at people who have suffered and struggled with this type of disease or problem. There are systems out there that can help people. So point them in the right direction. Call your local NA, talk to someone, and do what you have to do in order to help them. If you yourself are struggling with drugs or you don't want to do this anymore, then reach out for help to your local NA, Narcotics Anonymous, or to organizations like Intercambios, and realize that there is help out there for you and for your loved one. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Please make sure that you rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you once again to Dr. Torruella. And I hope that everything is okay down in Puerto Rico. And I hope that, the help gets there soon and good qualified help. We don't need anyone going down there throwing paper towels at anyone anymore. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Much love and peace.